How's it going, boys? It's me, your favorite Snake Souls merchant, and today I want to have a philosophical discussion about this sentence right here. Do you think a handgun or a rifle is gonna protect you against the government? The government that has jet fighters, tanks, and just for the fun of it, let's throw in orbital bombardment platforms and wizards who can call meteors from the sky. Do you think a handgun can work against that? Do you think if the government wants you dead, then you would not be dead? Now, I honestly think this is an extremely short-sighted sentence to make, because anyone who thinks that obviously cannot think even 2 steps ahead, which is kind of concerning in my opinion, honestly. While it is true, if the government wants you dead, it will most likely 100% make you dead. But the fact is that if you have guns and rifles, you have a very good chance of surviving all these orbital bombardments and wizards calling meteors down from the sky, because of 2 extremely simple reasons. And these simple reasons are 1. Human ethics, 2. Interference from other countries. Now, before this, let me quickly explain to you one thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand nowadays. It's that, and it is the thing that countries nowadays fear more than anything. They fear this one simple thing more than any economic depression, any magical disease that kills millions or even possibly billions. Countries fear this one thing a lot more than absolutely anything else. They fear it even more than wars, even more than a global war. And that is, are you ready for it? Because it's honestly pretty simple. A civil war. Yes, every country will do absolutely everything in its power to prevent a civil war. Nowadays, if a civil war happens, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it doesn't matter which side wins. Even if you have one side that wants to keep everything as it was prior to the civil war, and the other side that we don't even care what they honestly want in this case, even if that side that wants to keep everything as it was previously wins, the country is going to be unrecognizable, and it's to a degree, well, to not make this too long, game over for that country in a lot of ways. So, that is the thing that countries fear the most. But let's imagine that a civil war happens in the USA. And yes, we're going to use the USA as an example for this. And why would guns and rifles save you against the military that can just pretty much exterminate you like pests because of overwhelming firepower? Well, the answer is simple. The answer is a 2-parter. First, let's look into the morality. So, if there's a side that does not have the army, and there's a side that has the army. One side has only guns and rifles, the other one has guns, rifles, tanks, destroyers, and whatnot. The singular moment a tank rolls in and starts killing civilians, you are 1 step away from an insurrection. Even if the military does unquestionably go with it, and, most likely, I'm assuming this while I'm not American, I feel pretty comfortable in assuming this, that the absolute vast majority of people in the US Army would not exactly be okay with starting killing other people from the United States just because their government ordered them. That would already not be good. That would already inspire ideas of insurrection within the forces that are commanded by the government. But the moment you fire a tank, the moment you use a missile, the moment you use a jet fighter to start killing civilians, you have literally committed genocide, pretty much against someone who is absolutely unarmed pretty much in that situation. And it's almost impossible to justify. The moment the first tank starts slaughtering people, the civilians pretty much at this point, you are 1 millimeter away from an insurrection within the army, and half of the army, or probably even more or even less, it depends on the circumstances, joining the opposition. And now the opposition has also tanks, jet fighters, wizards who can rain out down meteors, and orbital bombardment striking platforms. And it turns into, well, pretty much a shitfest, let's be real. And that is one of the reasons why handguns and rifles would save you. Because if one side has handguns and only rifles, the other side is incapable of using mass weapons of destruction like that. They're incapable of using tanks. Because the moment they start to use tanks, it's pretty much like killing just unarmed civilians. Also, there is the risk. What happens if we use tanks? They already have rifles and machine guns and whatnot. But now, if we lose a tank, suddenly they have a tank. What happens if we lose more tanks? Well, then the problem just escalates, and no one wants the problem to escalate from each side. So here's the here's the first part, and the second part is even greater. Well, honestly, the big part is that nowadays governments will do absolutely anything and everything they can to not create a civil war. Because everyone knows that a civil war is a loss for everyone in that country. And I'm not just talking about, people casualties. The country pretty much stops existing after civil war as it was previously. And it's pretty much impossible to restore. And now the other part. What happens, again, one side has handguns and rifles, the other one has handguns, rifles, and a lot more. While they're fighting with handguns and rifles, the outside world is saying, stop it. But they're not doing exactly a lot else. Well, they are actually doing a lot more, but we're not going to be looking into that too deeply. They're saying, stop it, pretty much. This is bad, ceasefire, get your things together, blah, blah, blah. But the moment, again, the other side starts to use tanks or whatnot, instantaneously, the world would react. And especially if we're talking about the US. Now, admittedly, for every country, it would be a little bit different what happens. But for the US, it's pretty much 100% clear. If the government starts using tanks, jet fighters and whatnot against their own, instantaneously the next day after the news breaks, every other country in the world would cut almost all ties, all trade agreements, all everything with the US. The sanctions would be tremendous. Well, obviously not everyone, but most would. And the moment that happens, one side is kind of defenseless against that, which means that side, if someone, for example, like China, Russia, some kind of Korean, doesn't matter which country, if a country decides to support the other side and give them also some kind of heavy weapons that can shoot out the drones from the sky, weapons that can blow up tanks, that side now can fight on equal footing. They started with hand rifles and, just normal, handguns and rifles. But now they have more. Why? Because the moment this is the main thing. The moment civil war happens in a country, all the world's attention instantaneously gets to it, and every country is picking which side to support, because one side will be a lot more beneficial than the other side to them. And if they support that side in their fight, well, then it's going to be very, very beneficial to them if that side wins. And then there's countries that want to just, use this chance to destroy the US from within without actually sending their troops. AKA, big countries that have the resources can give the side that just has handguns and rifles some heavy artillery so they can fight back and they can just slowly chip away at the country from within. That will also happen instantaneously. So yeah, it's devastatingly easy. Also, there's always a fear that, a country may actually decide to support one side and actually use its troops. Admittedly, in the case of the US, that would be I would be extremely surprised if that ever happened. Support via economic means and armaments, sure. Support through actually giving them troops and making them self-present, no. don't see that ever happening. But now you can probably see how this happens. This is why guns will protect you from the government. At least in the case of the USA. Admittedly, other countries may have may happen differently. For example, if we look at Europe, and there are small countries, and if a small country has, for example, 10% Russian population or something like that, well, then you have to deal with Russians. Imagine if any small country in Europe that has a Russian population starts a civil war, and all the Russians are on one side. Russia instantaneously gives them troops, gives them weapons, and so on and so on and so on. You see? And that way, no one that country doesn't win. Now, first, most foremost, obviously, is the fact that every country will do absolutely everything until the last shred of possibility to prevent a civil war. But if a civil war happens in the US, the people with guns and rifles have a chance because they have guns and rifles. Having an orbital bombardment platform doesn't exactly mean anything if the moment you decide to push the button to nuke someone, you lose. It's like a self-losing button in this case. So that's pretty much it. So, this was Quizzer Sensei. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the channel, check out Discord, check out the Patreon, check out everything, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.